Good afternoon. Thank you for joining Family Caregiver Alliance for Keeping Safe from Financial Abuse. I'm Calvin Hu, Education Coordinator at FCA and your host. For nearly 4 decades, Family Caregiver Alliance has been working through the Bay Area and across the nation to improve the well-being of family caregivers. We offer support through consultations, classes, workshops, publications, retreats, research, and advocacy. You can visit us by going to our website at www.caregiver.org. Now for some quick housekeeping. During the webinar, your phones and mics are going to be muted. So if you have any questions, you can ask them by using the chat-style question box on your screen. We'll get to as many questions as we can at the end of the webinar. We'll also be asking you to give some feedback after the webinar ends. And we use this to help shape future programs, so I'd like to thank you in advance for filling those out. I read all the comments. So today I'd like to welcome Nicole Fernandez. Nicole's the Training and Outreach Specialist at EDAPT, which is the Elder and Dependent Adult Protection Team. Now, EDAPT is quite an interesting organization as it links multiple county resources. This is for San Mateo County in California. And these are the San Mateo County Aging and Adult Services Division, the District Attorney's Office, County Counsel's Office, and local law enforcement who are tasked with enforcing and tracking down cases of elder abuse. So Nicole's been with EDAPT since the end of 2015. Before then, she worked in California State Legislature and specialized in community relations, senior services, Veterans Affairs, and health policy. Nicole earned her BA in Political Science from San Jose State University and is now working on getting her master's in Public Administration from California State University, Dominguez Hills. So now that you know a little bit more about our guest, I'd like to turn things over to Nicole.
Hi there. Thank you so much for that great introduction, Calvin. And I'd like to thank the Family Caregiver Alliance for recognizing the need about these issues and for inviting me to speak on this important issue today. So let's get started. You'll see that the name of this webinar is called Keeping Safe from Financial Fraud. So I hope by the end of it you'll have some tools to keep you and your loved ones a little bit safer from those who are trying to take advantage of your loved ones financially. Next slide, please. So let's go a little bit into the background on elders and their portion of the population. I know a number of individuals in the audience care for a dependent adult in their life, but statistics are more readily available for individuals who are older. So we're gonna talk a little bit about that background right now. This National Center on Elder Abuse estimates that there are 40.1 million Americans over the age of 65. That's 13%, an astonishing 13% of the population. As the baby boomer generation ages, the proportion of older adults will continue to increase. Just look at the bar and how it goes up in estimates through 2050. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about dependent adults. For the purposes of defining victims of elder and dependent adult abuse, a dependent adult is someone between 18 and 64 who has certain mental or physical disabilities that keep him or her from being able to do normal activities or protect himself or herself. According to the 2010 census, that's about 56.7 million Americans that live with some sort of disability. That's 19% of all Americans. As you know, dependent adults often have a caregiver around, a relative, a friend, someone they know and trust to handle their affairs. Dependent adults live in a variety of situations. Some reside at home, some in board and care facilities, some in nursing homes, some in other institutional settings. Next slide, please. Let's talk a little bit about the types of abuse that exist. This grid is from a nonprofit called Veto Violence, and it is called 6 types of elder abuse, but this also applies to our dependent adults too. You'll see physical abuse, which involves hitting, kicking, slapping, what you typically consider abuse. There's sexual abuse, which is engaging in sexual contact without consent or with somebody who's unable to give consent. There's emotional abuse, which involves harming their self-worth or their emotional well-being. It may also involve name-calling or scaring. There's neglect, which is where a person who is tasked to look over somebody fails to meet the basic needs of someone who cannot take care of themselves in the way of food, housing, clothing, medical care. There's abandonment, which is leaving an elder or a dependent adult or someone else who cannot care for themselves alone, leaving them alone and not providing care when they have been tasked to do so. And the last one, and the one we'll be focusing on today, is financial abuse, which is basically misusing the property or assets or money of an elder or dependent adult. If we can move on to the next slide, please. So let's go a little bit more into what financial abuse is. As defined by the National Center on Elder Abuse, which, by the way, is a fabulous resource for statistics on elder and dependent adult abuse. Highly recommend you look that up. Financial abuse is defined as financial or material exploitation, it's the exploitation or illegal or improper use of an elder's funds, properties, or assets. Examples include cashing an elderly person's check, forging an older person's signature, misusing money or possessions, coercing someone into signing a document, and the improper use of the legal statuses of conservatorship, guardianship, or power of attorney. If we can move into the next slide. Please. Statistics show that elders and dependent adults lose it's estimated that they lose about $2.9 billion annually from elder abuse. That's a shocking statistic. And some other statistics that have recently come to light. Out of New York, a recent study by out of New York called the New York Elder Abuse Prevalence Study showed that for every one case of elder financial abuse, another 24 go unreported. That's pretty astonishing. There may be as many as 5 million victims of elder financial exploitation, according to the publication Consumers Digest. Next slide, please. So this is a handy little chart that I found out of the Boston Globe, and it is sort of a visualization of the outcome of the MetLife study on elder financial abuse. The thing about financial abuse is that it's sort of hard to track the statistics for reasons we'll go into later, including embarrassment, a fear of losing your independence. Quite often when someone is taken advantage of or exploited, they don't report when they have lost funds. So it's sort of hard to track the actual statistics or get an accurate case of how much is lost. So depending on the study you're looking at, you may get different numbers all the way. This study in particular, the MetLife study on elder financial abuse, was most interesting to me because it profiled the common victim and the common perpetrator. The major takeaways that I had from this one are that victims are 2 times more likely to be women, those who have been victimized financially. They are the most common victim profile is a woman between the ages of 80 and 89, living alone and requiring some sort of assistance. And the most common abuser or perpetrator is a male, most commonly a man between the ages of 30 and 60 years old. Let's go to the next slide, please. So there are some reasons why older adults may fall victim to scams more often than others. Their judgment can be compromised. As brains age, they change. And the first sign of losing capacity is actually the ability to handle money, studies have shown. Seniors who have impaired financial capacity may seem fine in other aspects of their life. They can still go about their daily life, and you will never know that they are losing track of bills or giving money to caregivers or writing checks or playing the lottery or sweepstakes. You will just never know. Another reason might be loneliness and depression. Scammers prey on the lonely, and they very often take advantage of somebody who is just seeking out another contact by another human. So they may fall into victimization because they're just sort of looking for somebody else to talk to. Next slide, please. So there are also some reasons why elders may be reluctant to report crimes against them. And for all of the bullet points here, embarrassment is a large one. Some fear that because they have been victimized by a scam or by someone else, they fear that they're going to be they'll lose their independence, that the courts or a loved one may move them into a home automatically because they got taken advantage of. It may be that the person who is abusing them is somebody that they love. They may fear retaliation from an abuser. They may lack mental capacity. They may be in a state of denial about the abuse that they are suffering. And a subset of that is that the abuse, they maybe have been living in a state of being abused for so long that it's considered normal behavior. In some of our older population, they may have an inability to communicate abuse. They may have lost function in their voice. They may not have the capacity anymore to communicate. And there's always the cultural norm of some cultures of keeping things behind closed doors, keeping what stays in your home private. So those are some reasons why an elder may not want to report being victimized. Next slide, please. This is a really interesting graphic from our friends at saveandinvest.org, and it talks about the non-traditional costs of financial fraud. So a lot of money, as we were talking about, $2.9 billion approximately is lost to elder financial fraud per year. But those who are victimized two-thirds report that they have severe emotional reactions to this. 50% reported that they experienced severe stress, 44% indicated anxiety, 38% indicated difficulty sleeping, and 35% reported that they suffered from depression. They incurred additional debt as a result of the primary financial losses. So some paid late fees, some paid fees for bounced checks, some resulted in additional fees for declaring bankruptcy. 29% of all victims who suffered from financial fraud incurred indirect costs or paid more than $1,000. And almost half of the victims blamed themselves for being defrauded. And that is a sad statistic. Let's move on to the next slide, please. So here are some common types of scams that someone may try to use on you as a caregiver or on an elder. So I'm going through probably the top 10 or 12, and there are other ones that rear their ugly heads all the time. What I would encourage you to do is check out the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They usually have a really good list, and FBI maintains a really good list of scams that are often used on elder and dependent adults. There was a great report that just came out from the U.S. Senate Committee on Aging that talks about the top 10 that you can access by Googling that. So let's go to the next slide. One of the more popular ones is Medicare and health insurance fraud. Someone will approach an elder or a dependent adult or a caregiver and say, and try and sell them useless supplemental plans or discounted products. Some of the providers associated with these plans may bill unnecessarily or charge higher prices than others for these items in order to take advantage of Medicare and Medi-Cal or Medicaid benefits. So the solution for this one is check your Medicare statements when they come in, check your loved one's Medicare statements when they come in, and Medi-Cal. Make sure that they are accurate make sure that they're accurate servicing as much as you can. If something looks awry, if something doesn't look proper, make sure you call the Center for Medicare or Medicaid Services with questions at 800-MEDICARE. If the supplemental, and the 800 Medicare can also answer questions about supplemental insurance. And if you always have any questions, you can always call if you're in California, the California Department of Insurance, and they can refer you to any other department that might be able to assist you with consumer issues related to insurance. If you live in another state, you can always Google your state's insurance department. Let's move on to the next slide, please. So the funeral and cemetery scams are especially heinous in my mind because they try to take, certain individuals may try to take advantage of someone who's in a state of grief after losing somebody. There has been a common, unfortunately very common, tactic of funeral homes or mortuary operators trying to oversell or upsell grieving families on services during their time of loss, during their difficult and emotional time. And in this case, what I would encourage everybody to do, encourage your loved one to prepare in advance. So set forth in a legal document what you would like to see in your funeral. Buy a plot in advance. Make it as unemotional as possible, so that your loved ones in a time of grief don't have to make these decisions about what you would have wanted. And that in the long run will save your loved ones money, hopefully. We're based in California, so I'm going to give you advice for California, but you can check your state anyway. But contact the California Cemetery and Funeral Bureau. They're based out of Sacramento. You can Google their name, or it's cfb.ca.gov. You can also call their 800 number, and they can make sure that the person that you're dealing with is licensed and in good standing. You can also call the Better Business Bureau or your local chamber of commerce for the city that the funeral or cemetery home is in to make sure that they're in good standing, and don't do business with anybody who has complaints or bad reports on their name. Let's move on to the next one. Fraudulent anti-aging products. Everybody aspires to look younger. The problem is that scammers are going to, maybe some of them come door to door, some of them call you, some of them email you, and they are trying to sell you products that will make you look younger. And what we would encourage you to do is to not do business with anybody who's trying to sell you a product door to door. If you are looking for something in this vein, make sure you do your research beforehand. Make sure that you are contacting the person who might potentially sell you a product that may or may not work. Research. Make sure that the product you are using has been approved by the Food and Drug Administration, if appropriate, or whatever the proper agency is to bless those sorts of products. And always consult your doctor before using a product or a pill or whatever product it may be that you are thinking about using. Let's move on to the next one, please. Contractor fraud. Huge issue here in California, and especially here in San Mateo County where I work, because property values are so high. So many seniors are sitting on a lot of money, and some contractors take advantage of that. Contractors, some will come up to your door. They will actually stake out elders who are perhaps working in their garden or something else, and they will come up to you and say they will fix something. Your roof looks like it's about to fall apart. Let me clean your gutters for you. Whatever it may be, they say they'll be able to fix it at a discount. And an elder who may not know what the state of their roof is or may not know the state of their gutters says, okay, go ahead and do that. What I would encourage you to do is don't do business with anybody who approaches you. That's sort of going to be a major theme about this. If somebody cold calls you, you probably don't need to be doing business with them. Call people when you have a need that needs to be fulfilled, and you'll have time to research the appropriate contractors and get multiple estimates. Make sure that the contractor you decide to do work with is in good standing with, in California, it's called the Contractor State License Board. In your state, just look up the state license board for your state. You can just put that into Google. Anybody who does any handyman who does work on a home over $500 needs to be insured and licensed in the state of California. So make sure that you do your due diligence in finding a contractor who is licensed. And when they give you a license number, make sure you go online and double check that the license number they gave you belongs to the person that they claim they are. In order to contact the Contractor State License Bureau for California, you can call them at 800-321-CSLB or cslb.ca.gov. Let's move on to the next one, please. Counterfeit prescription drugs. We know that as individuals age or the need for drugs tends to go up. You tend to get more prescriptions as you get older. And it's an expensive endeavor. Medicare or Medicaid can only cover so much. So there have been times recently where individuals have offered special discounts on drugs. You may have been sent an offer either via mail or via email or a phone call indicating that cheaper drugs may be available internationally. The most common place is Mexico, but some of them have come through Canada, through Central America. Often they may look legitimate when you visit their website, but what you receive is not what they promised you. First, what I would encourage you to do is not to do business with anybody, again, who approaches you about cheaper drugs. If you are looking for options, go ahead and try and find a reputable source, someone that maybe a friend or someone has experience with, but don't do business with anybody who approaches you either by mail or by phone or by email. Go through a trusted pharmacy under ideal circumstances if you can. If you do decide to order pharmaceuticals internationally, I would encourage you to take that to your trusted pharmacy or your doctor to make sure that the pills you received are exactly what you need it to be and that they're legitimate. Next slide, please. Telemarketing is a huge one. We know that many elders and dependent adults receive phone calls from individuals promising them products or sweepstakes or whatever it may be. What I would encourage you to tell your parent or your loved one is don't answer the phone if you don't know the phone number. And the difficult thing about talking to our parents and grandparents about that is that they were raised in a time to be polite. It's how they communicate via their landline. They pick up the phone no matter what. And telemarketers take advantage of that. And try and corner loved ones into buying products that they don't need. So the first thing that I would do is highly encourage you to tell your loved one not to pick up the phone if they don't know the phone number. They can leave a voicemail, the telemarketer or whoever's on the other end, and the elder or someone else can call them back. It shouldn't be that big of a deal. Again, don't do business with anybody who cold calls you. You should approach them first after doing research. Check with your local Department of Consumer Affairs or Better Business Bureau or Attorney General before doing business with anybody who you haven't researched in advance. Just research is key. And make sure you have a current registration on the Do Not Call list. All the phone calls will not be eliminated from your phone, unfortunately, but it will certainly cut down. And if you do have a phone number that's calling you over and over again after you've registered on the Do Not Call list, see if you can capture some information, a phone number or even an area code, and you can always report that entity to the Federal Communications Commission or the Federal Trade Commission, and they can open up an investigation. If enough people report from a certain phone number. Let's move to the next slide, please. So another popular scam is internet fraud, where someone will contact you. One of the versions is someone will contact you via email claiming to be the Crown Prince of Nairobi or something else, and that you've won a lottery or you've won a sweepstakes or they have a special discount just for you. If you don't know the emailer, don't listen to them. Just delete it. Just click delete right off the bat. They may try to steal your identity. They may try to steal your credit card information. Just if you don't know the sender, hit delete. We would encourage you to sort of try and keep your loved ones away from internet fraud. If you receive a link in an email that like let's say Wells Fargo or your bank or your credit union sends you an email saying there's something wrong and we need you to log in and tell us about it, what I would encourage you to do is never to use the link in the email itself. Simply point your arrow to the browser and type in Wells Fargo or bankofamerica.com. That way you know where you're going. Links, the scammers typically manipulate links sometimes so it looks like it's going one place and then it'll take you to a totally different website that looks similar to what you're used to, and you'll put your login information and they'll have access to your accounts or your credit card. Make sure when you're doing business online, when you are purchasing something through Amazon or through any other commercial site, in the first part of the URL it says HTTP. Make sure it says HTTPS, which means that it is a secure connection and is a legitimate connection. If you're going to buy something online, make sure you use your credit card, not your debit card. If someone gains access to your credit card, it's easy to dispute it and get your funds refunded to you. With debit cards, it's a little bit more difficult, and that's a direct link to your bank account. So I would always encourage you to use your credit card if possible. Use reputable online stores when buying. So make sure it's notable. If you can help it, make sure that it is someone through a website you know and trust. Amazon, whatever the larger online commercial retailers are that you like. If you are, be careful when you're buying things internationally, especially if you have a way of buying it within the country. I would recommend you do that. And report any cyber crimes to the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. The URL for that is ic3.gov. And you can open up a complaint and they can look into any issues of cybercrime that you may encounter. Next slide, please. So on the peninsula here in California and in a lot of other places nationally, home prices have gone up. And we all know that as people age, if you own property, you may take out a reverse mortgage or utilize some other tool in order to pay for long-term care. And reverse mortgages can be a good way to access your home's equity. You just need to do it smartly. And unfortunately, there are a lot of individuals who try to prey on homeowners to take advantage of them. What we'd encourage you to do if you were going to pursue this route is, again, going back to what we were talking about before, don't do business with anybody who solicits you. Make sure that if you decide that you would like to pursue a reverse mortgage or explore that option, that you do your homework and maybe take some recommendations from friends about who they did theirs with, and make sure that the person you choose is in good standing with the State Department or national organization that licenses those financial professionals. Don't sign anything that you don't understand, and just especially research your reverse mortgage counselor's credentials. Don't be impressed by random letters at the end of some people's names. That could mean anything. I could make up a set of 3 letters and add it to the end of my name, and it won't mean anything. So just make sure you do your research with the appropriate licensing agency to make sure that the person you're working with is in good standing. Let's move to the next slide, please. I would encourage you to keep an eye out for sweepstakes and lottery scams. We talked briefly about what occurred earlier, but international scammers will often approach you saying you won the lottery, and for a small fee you can access the total amount of what you won. And unfortunately, a lot of elders in our area tend to turn that money over to the scammers in one of 2 ways. The most common ways are either wiring the money via Western Union or another one of those agencies, and the new one that's recently come up is called Green Dot cards, and these are Visa debit cards that you put money on, and then you use the number. Each of these cards is assigned a number, like a credit card or a debit card, and then you turn that number over to the scammer, and they can take the money remotely from uploading it on the Visa Green Dot card. It is nearly impossible to get money back once it has been taken via wire or via a Green Dot card. This goes back to what we were talking about before. If you don't know the sender of the email, if you don't know the person on the other end of the phone, don't pick up the phone. Click delete on the email right off the bat. Do not wire money to anybody. Don't wire money to anybody. Do not upload money to Green Dot cards to anybody. There are other ways of getting money to someone. If you didn't enter a lottery, if someone says you magically won a lottery or a sweepstakes, if you didn't enter the lottery, you can't win. So if you don't remember entering the lottery, it's not real. And if someone calls you and says, if you feel threatened, international scammers, especially these ones who run this lottery scam, have actually been making threats of physical violence to elders and their loved ones recently, which is unfortunate. Make sure you call the police. And let them know that this is happening. If you feel threatened or compromised, please do call law enforcement immediately. Let us move to the next one, please. The grandparent scam. This is also pretty common in my neck of the woods in San Mateo County, but nationally it's also a problem. An elder will get a phone call from someone who, quote unquote, sounds young, so a younger relative, claiming to be a grandchild or younger relative, and they need bail money because they were international and got in trouble with the law. They will often claim to be a grandchild, and they will say, "Don't tell mom or dad, I'm so ashamed. But if I don't get this money to the courts, to the bailiff, whatever, they're going to hurt me. They've threatened my family. They said that they're going to keep me here forever." It's so unfortunate because it preys on the things that make grandparents great, which is their love for their grandchildren. And it's just so sad that so many people get taken advantage of with this particular scam. And going back to what before they ask the young person, the quote unquote young person, the perpetrator, will ask the elder to wire money over or to send money over via green dot card. So a couple of pieces of advice that we would give to you and to an elder is to make sure that your elder has faith. You have a good enough relationship with your elder that they are going to check in with you before they wire money. Just broach the topic and encourage them that if they get a phone call like that, and if they are scared that their grandchild is in trouble, that they come talk to you first to make sure that Sammy and Katie are okay. And if you can, make contact with the grandchild themselves just to make sure that everything is okay. And also report any occurrences of this, and with any of the other scams, report any occurrences of this to law enforcement. The next slide, please. The sweetheart scam. That's also a very common one in my neck of the woods, where a new love interest or a friend comes around and they sidle up to your loved one, the elder in your life, and perhaps start asking for money, or they want to sign on to the deed of their property, or they ask for very large purchases or gifts or cash. It's always very difficult with this one because we don't want to keep anybody from experiencing love. But we encourage everybody to make sure that with your loved one, you keep your eyes open. We don't want to discourage anybody from potential romantic suitors, but make sure that if you hear about somebody in your elder's life, a new person, make sure you take the initiative to introduce yourself to that person. Make sure that you get to size them up and make sure that everything is okay. Don't be afraid about Googling the new person in your elder's life. You never know what you can find out. Make sure you introduce them around. Try not to allow your elder in your life to make any sudden additions or give any sudden amounts of money to a person. Make sure that they've been in the elder's life for a little while, and encourage your elder, if they are going to take action of adding somebody to the deed on a property, or to add someone to a bank account, make sure they consult their financial advisor before doing that. Sometimes it takes hearing something from a financial advisor or somebody they trust that it'll get through to the elder, whereas a loved one won't get through with an elder. So just look for different sources when that happens. And if you do suspect something, you can always contact law enforcement or Adult Protective Services, and they might be able to offer some resources. So let's move on to the next slide, please. The asset recovery scam is all of these scams are pretty heinous, but this one is pretty bad. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau just put out a attention alert on this one, where victims of scammers are actually being approached by other companies, who claim that they can help recover your lost assets by paying a fee up front, of course. And it's really unfortunate that they are trying to victimize victims twice. What we would encourage you to do with your loved one is, again, don't do business with anybody who calls you. If you do decide that you want to try to recover your assets using a service like this, make sure you do your research, make sure that they are in good standing with whatever agency looks over these individuals in your state. Research, in California, I'd encourage you to research these firms with the Department of Consumer Affairs, the Better Business Bureau, and the Attorney General, and the Department of Business Oversight over here. And you can always contact the consumer CFPB, and they always have resources for you to make sure that the professional you're choosing is in good standing. Let's move on to the next slide, please. So we are approaching the last type of scam, which is the investments and annuity scam, focusing on this sort of from a bird's eye view, because it's very complicated. And the Family Caregiver, the FCA asked me to just touch a little bit on here about sort of where someone can get in trouble with these. The problem is that sometimes agents, financial representatives and agents will target elders to sell unneeded annuity contracts, or preying on an elder's fear that their retirement funds that they have now will not last them through the end of their life. And many financial professionals are on the up and up, but unfortunately many aren't. So let's go into a couple of definitions about different professionals that exist. Can we move to the next slide, please? So there are conservators. This is a person or an organization who's appointed by a judge to care for another adult who cannot manage his or her own finances. There are conservators that exist through the county. There are also professional conservators who do this for a living. They may be, so public guardian is through the county. A family member or a loved one may also serve as a conservator, and then there are the private conservatorship professionals. Next slide, please. There are also financial and investment advisors. These are individuals who are in the business of giving advice about securities to clients. Some of these include financial planners, accountants, insurance agents, and attorneys. Next slide, please. Here's what we encourage you to do. A lot of these individuals are honest people, and some of them aren't. So what we do is, we would encourage you to do is just make sure, again, you do your homework before entrusting somebody with your parent or loved one's financial future. And we'll go into more detail about organizations you can contact and research, how to do the research that we're encouraging you to do. So let's move on to the next slide, please. So we're going to go into another segment of our webinar today to look at the potential indicators of general abuse, and then we will look at financial abuse in a little bit. These are just some signs to keep an eye out for, and if any of these signs appear in your loved one, we encourage you to call Adult Protective Services for your area. Does your loved one appear uncared for or has poor personal hygiene? Does your loved one have unexplained bruising or sores or burns? Are they depressed or confused or afraid or agitated? Do they show fear or anxiety? Next slide, please. Do they show fear or anxiety around certain household members? Unfortunately, the statistic is that 90% of abusers are either a caregiver or related to an elder in some way. And so if an elder shows a certain amount of fear or anxiety, that might be a sign that something's going on. Another sign, going back to the statistic we just talked about, is if the elder has a child or caregiver that is dependent on the senior for shelter or money. There may be the impetus to take advantage of them financially or abuse in order to keep those funds available to them. Does the elder have changes in appetite or a dramatic weight gain or loss? We all know that as people get older, there are illnesses that happen and changes to a body. But if if it happens in a dramatic amount of time, that may be a sign that something greater is going on. Next slide, please. Is the elder unable to do basic things such as make meals or shop or get around? Is the elder isolated or restricted to who visits? Sometimes if there is a caregiver or somebody who lives with an elder or visits them on a regular basis and sort of maintains their life, and the elder can no longer come to the phone or no longer accepts visits on weekends after church, or if there's something out of the ordinary, it may be a sign of something that's going on. Again, highly encourage you to call your local Adult Protective Services just to run the scenario by the social workers and see if there might be a need for somebody to step in. Another one is an untreated chronic illness. As we were talking about before, many caregivers are tasked with taking care of loved ones and have to help a loved one maintain help them deal with their chronic illness, such as diabetes. And if the elder has memory issues and forgets to take their insulin, that might be something that needs to be explored with Adult Protective Services. Let's move on to the next slide, which are potential indicators in financial abuse to look for in loved ones. Does your loved one have unusual activity in their bank accounts? Do they give out money to random people, to their caregivers, to their loved ones, whereas they didn't do that before? Can they not track their money? Do they not know where their money went? Do they have unpaid bills or can't buy food or necessities that they used to be able to handle before? Another key sign is that there are relatives or friends or professionals who come out of the woodwork to talk about the elder's finances. They will often have quiet or secret conversations with an elder and tell the elder not to talk about it with any other member of the family or anybody else in their life. This might be a sign that there might be some financial impropriety going on. Let's move on to the next slide. So here are some proactive steps that you can take to protect your loved one. Going back to what we were talking about before, research. I cannot tell you how important it is to make sure that you know the person who you are entrusting your loved one's money with. Most financial advisors who work at your local bank or credit union are going to be employees of a financial services company that contracts with that company. So they're going to be working on a commission basis. So basically their livelihood depends on selling you products. It may be such that those products are not what you need. So what we encourage you to do is, just make sure you know what kind of financial professional you're dealing with and know who that person reports to. Do they work directly for the bank? Do they work for a contracted entity? How do they make their money? And that will help you determine what sort of financial professional to engage with. Use the financial industry regulatory authorities broker check to make sure your broker is in good standing with FINRA. And you can do that at brokercheck.finra.org. And make sure that the financial professional you go with is in good standing with the fiduciary authority in your state. In California, it's the Fiduciary Association of California, and you can check the status of that professional by going to pfac-pro.org. Next slide, please. So these are just some general safety tips. Don't explore alone. So if your loved one or family member decides that they want to go meet a friend that they met over the internet or however they met somebody, go with them. Make sure that you go with them to make sure that their safety is, and that the person that they're meeting is a good friend or a normal person. Don't give out your loved ones or your social security numbers over the phone, even if the person claims to be from a reputable government agency like IRS or Franchise Tax Board. The IRS and the Franchise Tax Board will not call you without sending you a letter first. So even if you can take the phone call and they can claim to be from the IRS or the Franchise Tax Board, take the person's name who's calling, take the person's number, what they're calling from, and then go to your phone book and look up the local office of the IRS or the Franchise Tax Board or your state tax entity and just call their customer service number and double check that the Franchise Tax Board or the IRS needs to be talking to you about something. Don't carry your social security card in your wallet or your purse. Next slide, please. If you are going to hire a home caregiver that is not a loved one, make sure that you go through a reputable agency that insures and does background checks on the caregivers. These people are coming into your home or your loved one's home and will be alone with them. You want to make sure that the person that's coming into your house, that you're inviting into your loved one's house, is just and fair and doesn't have any major blips in their background. Don't pick up the phone unless you recognize the caller, and don't answer the door to people you don't know. That person might be trying to check out your house about whether someone is home or not. They may be trying to steal from you or burgle you. And the only person I ever answered the door to that I don't know are Girl Scouts. And it is Girl Scout cookie season, by the way. Let's go to the next slide, please. As we were talking about before, research. Investigate any financial offers that come your way. Many financial professionals, some on the up and up, some not, may try to get an elder in your life to do business with them by offering them a free lunch or a free meal. If you get the free meal, but you also have to sit through the sales pitch, and then some elders feel, well, they bought me lunch, so I have to do business with them. That's not so. So basically, don't go see anybody who's offering you a free meal in order to sell you a financial product. You don't need that deal. And if you do decide that the lunch is too good to pass up, take a moment to research things with your financial professional before you buy that product. And make sure that you maintain open communication with your loved one about their finances. Money can be a difficult situation to talk about. And being a family member of someone who needs to be taken care of, there are already a lot of emotional complications, complex emotional situations that happen already. Do your best to remain non-judgmental. Do your best to gather as much information as you can from your elder. And if they have been previously taken advantage of, don't blame them. What you can do, the best thing that you can do now is see if you can get that money back and get the scammer who tried to take advantage of them prosecuted. So do your best to be non-judgmental. Next slide, please. Empower your loved one. Make sure that they know that it is their right to know where their money is going. Make sure that you review their bills and statements each month so that you see that the money is going where they're supposed to be. If a financial professional is handling their bills and statements, ask if you can get copies of them, and make sure that the bills and statements are going to the appropriate person and the appropriate address that you would like them to be going to. Next slide, please. If necessary, utilize legal safeguards to protect your loved one. Encourage your loved one to consult a professional about what they can do to protect their assets and property, and if need be, establish a limited or full power of attorney with a trusted friend or relative for your elder or for yourself while your loved one still has the capacity to do so. Next slide, please. And all of it comes back to, if you see something, say something. Adult Protective Services in your area, they're an agency that want to make sure that your elder and your loved one is taken care of. So if you suspect something, and if you suspect that a family member is suffering from abuse, just report it. Look up the number for APS in your local phone book, or you can search the internet for Adult Protective Services in then your county or state. And know that privacy is of the utmost importance to all APS agencies. So make sure, just if you see something, if you suspect something that's going on, if you need resources, if you just need someone to listen to a situation and you're really not 200% sure that something's going on, but you sort of suspect something, if your spidey senses are going off, call APS. The worst thing that's going to happen is that a social worker will go out and visit the loved one in your life, and if nothing's wrong, they'll close the case, turn around, and go back and thank them for their time. But you can sleep a little bit more soundly knowing that you've been proactive about the elder in your life. And that is today's presentation. So I want to thank you so much for joining me, and I think that we might have some questions.
Perfect. Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Nicole. Anecdotally, I've definitely been noticing more and more articles about, in particular, elder financial abuse. So, I'm really glad. I know we're all really glad at Family Caregiver Alliance that Nicole could stop by this afternoon and share her expertise with us and all of you. We do have, a couple of questions, so I'd like to get into that right now. First off, I know, Nicole and I, we were talking earlier about free credit reports as kind of a tool to watch over your finances and the finances of anyone you might be taking care of. And I was wondering if you could explain a little bit about the free credit reports, how you would get them, and kind of what the process is.
Absolutely. It's a great resource. The three major credit reporting bureaus came together to sort of set up a one-stop shop. You're allowed one credit report from each of the three bureaus per year. And you can access that by going to annualcreditreport.com. That's annualcreditreport.com, or calling 1-877-322-8228. There are some private companies out there who promise you a credit report for a small fee. Don't pay a fee if you can get it for free. Annualcreditreport.com. What financial professionals recommend you do, recommend consumers do, is via annualreport.com, get one of your free reports per quarter. So in April, you'll get one from the first credit reporting agency, and then 4 months later, you'll get it from the second, and then in December, you'll get it from the third. And that way you can sort of monitor how you or your loved one's credit reporting is going on throughout the year. And if something is not accurate on that credit report, as sometimes happens, or if you've been a victim of identity theft, you can contact the credit report and the proper authorities right there.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. I actually just want to kind of tack on to this. We had one listener asking about a security freeze on their credit reports, and I just wanted to answer that one really quickly, that if you wanted to learn more about, say, initial fraud alerts or security freezes, you can go to the FTC, which of course is the Federal Trade Commission, and they can kind of walk you through the various levels of protection and kind of locks you can put on your credit. We have a second question here. Great question. They wanted to know, if you suspect financial elder abuse, who would you end up reporting it to? Would it be the local district attorney's office? Would it be law enforcement? Would it be adult protective services? Who would you want to be contacting about that?
So if something isn't immediately wrong, if the situation is emergent, then always call 911. That is going to be your first stop. But then we would also encourage you, if things are not of an emergent situation, call Adult Protective Services and the proper law enforcement agency to report suspicions, and that gives them an opportunity to look into it. And local agencies typically work together. So if you feel better about it, you can always call the police department and then Adult Protective Services, but they're going to talk to each other also.
Okay, great, thanks. We have, let's see. Okay, another question. This is a listener who, they have a loved one who's actually already been victimized, and they're wondering if there's some additional resources you might be able to point them to help, set everything right and try and get things back to normal.
Well, I'm so sorry that your loved one has been taken advantage of. So I'm going to give out a bunch of agencies that you can call, and if you don't capture all of the information I'm about to give you, you can always contact me using the information that is provided on this last slide, and I'd be happy to send you a copy of what I have, or you can call me. But I'll call your Adult Protective Services agency and the local law enforcement agency immediately. If they have been a victim of a scam or a fraud of any type, you can call the United States Senate's anti-fraud hotline, and they have counselors and investigators available during business hours to help you out, and if necessary, to launch a complaint. You can call them by calling 855-303-9470. And those counselors are available during business hours to direct you to resources and initiate an investigation if necessary. If your loved one has been a victim of identity theft, the federal government has sort of set up a one-stop shop to help you recover your identity, and you can go to identitytheft.gov to file a complaint and obtain what's called a recovery plan. So they'll actually break down step by step what you need to do in order to take your finances back. If your loved one has been a victim of an online fraud scheme, file a complaint with the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, and that is, again, ic3.gov. If your loved one has been a victim of a scam of international origin, so very popular places where scammers tend to come from are both Nigeria and Jamaica. But it also happens nationally or internationally. Scammers don't know a home. So I would encourage you to call to file a complaint online with econsumer.gov. If your loved one is a victim of a scam by a predatory business, file a complaint with the Federal Trade Commission, and you can do that by going to FTC Complaint Assistant.gov. And if your loved one is in receipt of unwanted emails or text messages, especially after you've entered your phone number into the Do Not Call list, you can go ahead and file a complaint with the Federal Communications Commission, and that's consumercomplaints.fcc.gov.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Nicole. I also, there's actually one I just wanted to mention quickly, which is the National Center for Elder Abuse that our listeners might be interested in. It's ncea.aoa.gov. It's part of the Administration on Aging, which is under the Department of Health and Human Services. Just one final recommendation. We had a quick question about someone asking about these resources, if they could get a list or a copy. Again, if you weren't able to write them down, or if you wanted to make sure you didn't miss anything, as Nicole said, you're always welcome to give her a call or send her an email. Her contact information is on the screen right now.
And you can also contact Calvin, and Calvin can also forward any other. If we don't get to all the questions today, you can always email Calvin, and he can get that question to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my contact information is chu@caregiver.org. Let's see, we have another question here. Okay, this is a good one. This is a person who's interested in the topic. I think we're all a little worried about this, just hearing it in the news and worrying about our own family. And they want to make sure that they could get all as much information as they can on the financial aspect of caregiving for someone, or actually managing someone else's finances. And they're wondering if you had any more additional resources that you could recommend.
There's a great publication put out by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and it is a guide that you can get both online and in print, called Managing Someone Else's Money. It's created specifically for those caregivers who are handling money and investments for someone who can't do it themselves. I'd highly encourage you to order a copy of this publication, and you can do that through their website at consumerfinance.gov.
Perfect. Thanks, Nicole. Yeah, they're a good outfit, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I know in past I think Nicole kind of mentioned this, but they'll periodically put out alerts or issues on kind of what's common, or what are the new scams operating. So, and this is of course also at their website. So a fantastic resource. I think we have time for one more question. Let's see. Okay, this is a great one. So this is a listener who they're caregivers, but it's a whole family. So it's their caregiving, and they also have siblings who are involved in it. Their older mother, who is a widow, and they're trying to kind of protect her financially, but also of course from all the other various types of abuse as she gets older. But being family, there's maybe not necessarily a complete agreement on what's the best course of action. So could you give any recommendations on how she should proceed?
Absolutely. Family dynamics are complicated as it is, but you add money and finances into the whole thing, and it just gets really, really difficult. So what I would encourage you to do is, if your mom is capable of having the conversation, is to sit down with her and establish what her desires are with regards to her money and her property, if she can, if she is capable of it. And then, using her wishes, sit down with all the siblings and talk about, establish what each of your responsibilities and goals are for your mother's care. So maybe one of you handles the finances, and one of you handles the day-to-day, and one of you handles bills on a monthly basis, however it might be. And just make sure you guys are all on the same page about her financial future. Pull her financial advisor into the conversation if you have one. You also, if the dynamics are so fraught between the siblings, you may want to also explore obtaining the services of a professional elder care mediator or counselor. And you can just Google elder care mediator or elder care counselor. And you can find someone in your area who might be able to facilitate a conversation, a much needed conversation, to make sure your mom is taken care of. And I wish you the best of luck in that.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Nicole. I know here at Family Caregiver Alliance, we get lots of calls from people who specifically have questions about caregiving with siblings. If you're in the San Francisco Bay Area and you have these issues, please give us a call. Of course, we have a fact sheet as well on our website that you're welcome to view and download. It's, of course, perfectly free at our website, caregiver.org. Just wanted to kind of add that last note in. So I think that's all the time we have now for questions. If you do have any other additional questions, you feel free to contact Nicole. Let me get her information back up. Nicole Fernandez, 650-573-2109, and Fernandez at smcgov.org. Also, feel free to contact Family Caregiver Alliance. You can contact me, CHU, at caregiver.org, or visit our website, caregiver.org. I hope you were able to learn some stuff. I always learn things from this webinar, and I hope you had an informative day with us. I'd like to, of course, thank Nicole again for spending the afternoon with us.
Thank you, Calvin.
We were very happy to get her over. It was a little bit of a back and forth, but I'm glad we were able to line it all up. The FCA webinars are a free, a continuing series. If you have any other, if you'd like information on upcoming webinars, you can visit our website, which is caregiver.org again. Thanks again, Nicole, for joining us today. So the webinar is now concluded. We hope to see you all next webinar, and have a great afternoon.